Alien girls were bred for slaughter. Until one man gave up everything to free them, Elias Rook stepped off the small human shuttle onto the dusty, barren surface of KL-9. The world looked lifeless from the outside. Endless plains of cracked earth, jagged metal towers that pierced the gray sky, and the faint hum of machinery that never stopped. The air carried a bitter metallic tang, and every step he took kicked up ash-colored dust. To the human eye, KL-9 was unremarkable, just another industrial planet in the far reaches of the galaxy. But Elias knew better. He had heard rumors, whispers carried across star systems. This world was different. This world was cruel. The sprawling facility ahead looked like a fortress, a massive structure of gray metal and black glass. Towers stretched high, with surveillance drones constantly circling above. At the base, rows of holding pens spread like a grid, each one enclosed by reinforced barriers. The pens were silent, or at least they seemed so from a distance, but Elias knew better. He could feel the tension in the air like a quiet warning. Something lived inside those pens, something that should not exist in chains. Elias adjusted the strap of his utility pack. He was a cargo inspector for a small interstellar trading company, not a soldier, not a hero. Humans were rarely important in this part of the galaxy. Most aliens considered them weak, insignificant. He had expected to be ignored. That was why he had come alone. Inside the main gate, the facility smelled of oil, disinfectant, and fear. The air was thick with the hum of machines and the distant clanging of metal. Workers, tall, alien, and indifferent, moved with precise efficiency. They paid no attention to Elias, though he could feel their gazes calculating, weighing him, deciding if he was worth a thought. Elias followed the prescribed route through the inspection tunnels, his boots echoing softly. As he walked, he noticed small details. The walls were scratched, the metal beams dented, cages lined the corridors, some empty, some occupied. And then he heard it, a faint sound, soft and trembling, almost like a whisper carried on the wind. He paused. The sound grew clearer, a melodic tone that carried pain and longing. It was a song, though broken and uncertain. He rounded a corner and stopped. The pen before him was unlike the others. It was smaller, filled with thin, fragile creatures, their skin pale and their eyes wide and dark. They were huddled together, their movements slow and cautious. And then one of them raised her head. Her eyes met his. For a moment, everything else disappeared, the humming machines, the metallic smell, the distant cries of other pens. The girl was small, her frame delicate, but there was something in her gaze that stopped him cold. She did not cry or plead. She looked at him with quiet curiosity, as if asking a question she did not yet have the words to speak. Elias swallowed hard. He had seen cruelty before, had walked past suffering and looked away. But this was different. These girls were not animals. They were not tools. They were alive, aware, and trapped. He stepped back, pretending to inspect the wall. The girl continued to stare, and in that stare he saw something he had not expected: hope. The inspection was brief. Elias moved through the facility, following his route, taking notes, scanning barcodes. Everything was recorded and reported, just like the company required. But in his mind, he kept returning to that small pen and the girl with the quiet eyes. At the end of his inspection, he left the facility as he had arrived, unnoticed, unremarkable. The shuttle lifted off, carrying him into the gray sky, leaving KL-9 behind. But Elias did not feel relief. He felt a knot in his chest, a weight that would not lift. Back in the shuttle, he reviewed his notes. Everything was normal, everything in order. The girls were accounted for, the facility was secure, the cargo logs were complete. By all measures, he could write a clean report and leave it at that. He could walk away, but he did not. The next night, Elias returned. Not officially. No one knew he was back. He had downloaded a map of the facility, memorized the patrol routes, and found a way in through the maintenance tunnels. His boots were silent on the cold metal floors as he moved, heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. He reached the small pen again. The girls were awake, moving quietly among themselves. The girl Sira, he decided to call her, stood in the corner, her eyes flicking toward him, wary but not afraid. Elias knelt down, keeping his voice low. "I am not here to hurt you," he said. The words sounded strange in the sterile corridor, yet he spoke them anyway. "I am Elias. Can you understand me?" Sira tilted her head, a small gesture but one that spoke volumes. Slowly she stepped closer. The other girls watched, uncertain. Elias held out his hand. She did not take it, but her eyes did not leave his. For hours he stayed. He brought water, small rations, simple tools to make their lives less miserable. He did not try to open the doors. He did not yet know how, but he showed them that someone could care. That someone could see them as beings, not cargo. In the days that followed, Elias returned in secret. Each time he stayed longer, learned more. The girls began to respond. Small things, a nod, a soft word, a gesture. Sira was the bravest, speaking the few words she knew in a mixture of her language and the human trade tongue. "You help?" she asked once. Elias nodded. That simple affirmation made her smile, but danger lurked at every corner. Surveillance drones roamed the facility constantly and guards inspected every corridor. Elias moved carefully, never leaving a trace, always hiding in shadows. Each night was a risk. If caught, he would not survive. Yet he could not stop. One evening he witnessed the full extent of the cruelty. A new group of girls was brought in from another world. They were terrified, their eyes wide with panic. Some had been hurt during transport. The overseers shouted commands, prodding them, striking them when they hesitated. Elias felt bile rise in his throat. He wanted to intervene to stop it, but he stayed hidden, forcing himself to observe. He needed to understand, to learn their weaknesses, their routines, before he could act. After the overseers left, Elias approached the pens. The girls were quiet, too afraid to move. Sira looked up at him, and in her eyes he saw the same question he had seen before. "Can someone save us?" Elias' chest tightened. He knew he could not do it alone, not yet, but he also knew he could not leave. These girls, these innocent lives depended on him now, whether they knew it or not. He began to plan. He studied the facility maps, learned the security schedules, and memorized every patrol route. He watched the guards, noting their habits, their weaknesses. Every piece of information mattered. He began to craft a strategy, not just to help one girl, but to give them all a chance. Days turned into weeks. Elias' nightly visits became routine, though always dangerous. The girls began to trust him slowly, cautiously. They whispered to each other, practicing words, sharing stories of the lives they had lost. Elias listened. He learned their names, their dreams, the fears they had never voiced. Each story added fuel to his determination. He also began to see something else. Even in this place of cruelty, even under the weight of oppression, the girls were resilient. They cared for each other, protected each other, shared what little they had. Their spirits were not broken, and that, Elias realized, was the spark he could ignite. One night, as he prepared to leave, Sira slipped a small piece of cloth into his hand. It was a token, a sign of trust. He looked at her, his heart heavy with emotion. "I promise," he whispered, "I will find a way." The shuttle lifted off the surface of KL-9 once more, carrying Elias back into the gray skies. But this time, he did not leave with a clean conscience. He left with a mission, a purpose, and a fire that could not be extinguished. He knew the road ahead would be dangerous. The cartel was powerful, their reach vast. One human alone could not defeat them. But Elias had something they could never understand: compassion, ingenuity, and a refusal to turn away from what was wrong. The pens of KL-9 remained silent as he departed, but the silence was no longer empty. Within it lay the first whispers of hope, the first glimmers of rebellion, and the quiet promise of freedom. Elias looked back once more, seeing the faint outlines of the girls huddled together. Sira's eyes met his one last time, filled with trust and expectation, and he knew with unwavering certainty that he would give up everything for them if he had to. Because sometimes, one human could be enough to change the fate of many. Elias Rook did not sleep that night. He sat in the small shuttle, staring at the gray horizon of Kale 9 through a thin viewport. The moons reflected faint light across the barren plains, and somewhere in the distance, the facility still hummed with life. His mind was alive with plans, calculations, and the faces of the girls he had left behind. Sira's eyes haunted him the most. Her quiet trust and small act of giving him the piece of cloth had become a symbol in his mind. It was fragile, yes, but it represented something far greater, hope. And hope, Elias knew, was the most dangerous thing to take away. He had a choice. He could leave Kale 9 behind, report the facility as functioning, and return to his quiet, safe human life. The authorities would pay no attention. Humans were powerless in this sector, too small, too weak to interfere. But Elias could not. He would not. He had seen the cages, heard the soft songs of pain, and known the truth. That truth gnawed at him. The girls were bred for slaughter. Each day they lived under chains, forced into obedience and fear, was a day stolen from life itself. And the cartel would not stop. They were patient, methodical, ruthless. For them, the girls were nothing more than commodities, and any human who interfered would be crushed without a second thought. Yet Elias was not just a human. He was clever, resourceful, and determined. He had survived dangerous trade routes, evaded pirate attacks, and negotiated with hostile species before. One human alone could not defeat the cartel. But one human with knowledge, patience, and courage could create a crack, a chance for change. He made his decision. The next day, under the guise of routine maintenance, Elias returned to the facility. He entered through the service corridors, moving silently, watching the guards and drones. His eyes flicked to every corner, noting cameras, patrol routes, emergency exits. Every detail mattered. Every mistake could cost lives. He reached the pen where Sira and the other girls were held. They were huddled together as always, fragile, cautious. But today, something had changed. They were alert, scanning the corridor with nervous energy. Sira's gaze met his, and he saw the flicker of recognition and hope. "I brought something," Elias whispered, kneeling down. From his pack he pulled a small vial of clean water and a compact ration of nutrient paste. He handed it to Sira, who hesitated, then took it carefully. She handed the food to the other girls, sharing it among them with quiet smiles. "You help again?" she asked in the broken trade language they had been building over the last week. Elias nodded. "I will always help," he said, "but you must be careful. They watch everything. You cannot speak to outsiders, and you cannot move too fast. Understand?" The girls nodded, though fear lingered in their eyes. Fear was their constant companion. Elias understood. It would take more than food and whispered words to free them. It would take courage, planning, and risk beyond anything they had imagined. Elias began his work in secret. He spent hours mapping the facility, learning every weak point, every blind spot. He studied the guards' habits, noting which patrols were lazy, which were efficient, and which could be bribed or distracted. He memorized access codes and security schedules. Every detail built the foundation for a plan that could either save hundreds of lives or destroy him in an instant. At night, he stayed longer with the girls. He taught them small skills, not just survival but understanding. He showed them how to move silently, how to communicate quietly, how to observe without being seen. Slowly, he began to introduce the idea of choice, a concept most had never experienced. "Why, we cannot leave?" one of the older girls asked one night, her voice trembling. Her name was Lyra. Elias knelt beside her. "Because they are afraid," he said softly. "They want to control you, but fear can be broken. And one day you can be free, you can choose." The words were simple, yet revolutionary. Freedom was a concept few had known. And now it lived in their minds, fragile and fragile as a candle in the wind. But the spark was there. Days passed and the girls grew stronger. Sira was the most daring, speaking more, moving faster, testing boundaries. Elias watched her progress with cautious pride. She reminded him of a soldier in training, small, fragile, but full of unspoken courage. Yet danger never slept. One evening, as Elias prepared to leave, a patrol drone hovered too close. Its sensors swept the corridor, and for a moment he froze. The girls scattered silently, hiding behind small barriers. The drone passed, but Elias knew it had noticed irregularities. Objects moved, faint traces of human presence. He needed to act faster. Elias began smuggling small supplies during his visits, medical kits, better rations, pieces of equipment to make simple tools. He taught the girls how to use them quietly. They learned quickly, adapting to the new knowledge with a mixture of fear and excitement. One day, he found a small, damaged communication terminal hidden in the maintenance corridor. The cartel had discarded it, assuming it useless. Elias repaired it with care, connecting it to the encrypted channels used by human authorities. He sent a short message. Girls held in pens KL9 need rescue. Immediate intervention required. The response was cold, bureaucratic, and terrifying. Human authorities replied that KL9 was outside their jurisdiction. Intervention could spark an interstellar conflict and they could not risk it. Humans were weak here. The girls were on their own. Elias deleted the reply. There was no room for hesitation, no space for law or protocol. If help would not come, he would make it. Alone. He realized the cost of compassion. He had no allies, no backup, and the cartel would not hesitate to kill him, or worse, to punish the girls for his interference. Every night he returned to the pens, he risked capture. Every move could be his last, but still he came. In time, the girls began to talk to him in whispers, sharing pieces of their lives. Names, places, memories of home worlds they would never see again. Stories of parents lost, of friends taken, of futures stolen. Elias listened, never judging, never faltering. Each story strengthened his resolve. He had to save them, he had to give them a life. Sira, braver than the rest, began asking questions about humans. "You same as us?" she asked. Elias smiled faintly. "We are different," he said, "but we feel the same things. We can hope, we can fight, we can care for others. That is what makes humans humans." Sira considered this, her dark eyes wide. "You fight," Elias nodded. "Sometimes. Sometimes fighting is the only way to protect those who cannot protect themselves." The idea fascinated her. She had never considered courage as a choice. In the pens, survival was all they knew, obey or suffer. Elias was teaching them something more, purpose. He began small. Nightly, he taught them to notice patterns in the guards' behavior. To move silently, to hide quickly, to communicate without sound. Small acts of rebellion, lessons in freedom. They listened, practiced, and sometimes even smiled, a rare gift in a place designed to crush joy. But every plan had risk. The cartel was thorough, and a single mistake could end everything. One night, a guard discovered a hidden stash of rations Elias had left. The overseer ordered a full inspection of the pens. Elias, hidden in a maintenance shaft, froze as they moved past. He could hear the voices of the girls, tense but quiet. They were silent, but he knew fear was thick in their hearts. The inspection passed narrowly. The girls were spared, but Elias understood that time was running out. The cartel would notice his presence soon if he did not act decisively. He could continue to teach, to smuggle, to whisper hope, but the girls would not remain safe forever. Elias decided it was time to escalate. He would not wait for rescue that would never come. He would act. Alone, he would find a way to break the pens and give these girls a chance to live. He began constructing a plan. He observed guard rotations, studied access points, and memorized security codes. He created small diversions, testing the limits of the system without alerting the cartel. Each night, the girls practiced the skills he had taught: silent movement, observation, communication. He spoke to Sira one night as they crouched behind a pen wall. "You must trust me," he said. "Not just me, but yourself. You are stronger than they think, and one day you will see the stars not through bars but for yourself." Sira nodded, her small hands clutching the edge of the metal wall. "I want to see," she whispered. Elias smiled faintly, a rare warmth in his eyes. "Then we will make it happen," he said. The pens of Kale 9 remained silent outside, but inside, a revolution of hope was stirring. A human had come, and for the first time these girls glimpsed a future beyond fear. A future that might be free. And Elias knew the price of compassion. Every step he took from this point forward could cost him his life. But he would pay it. Because some things, life, hope, freedom, were worth any cost. Elias Rook had been planning for weeks. Every patrol route, every access code, every blind spot in the massive pens of Kale 9 was memorized in his mind. He knew the risks. He knew that one mistake could cost the girls their lives, or his own. But he also knew that waiting longer would be the same as leaving them to die. The night was dark, the sky heavy with low clouds. The air was thick with metallic tang and the hum of machinery. Elias moved silently along the maintenance tunnels, every sense alert. He carried only what he needed: a pack of tools, some rations, a small electro-scrambler he had built to temporarily disable security cameras, and a heart full of determination. He reached the pen where Sira and the other girls were held. Through the small viewing window, he saw them huddled together as usual, but tonight was different. He had given them small lessons in quiet movement, in courage, in watching and listening. They were ready to try something new. Elias tapped on the glass softly. Sira looked up immediately, her dark eyes wide. The other girls followed her gaze. He smiled faintly. "Tonight we try," he whispered. "Tonight we move." He pressed a small button on his scrambler. A faint blue glow ran along its edges. The security cameras nearest to the pen flickered and then froze, blank for a few precious minutes. "Follow my instructions exactly," he said. "Stay low, stay quiet, trust me." Sira nodded, her small hands clutching the corners of the pen bars. Elias watched her carefully. She had grown stronger in the weeks he had been coming. She had begun to speak more, to move faster, to think strategically. He knew that courage, once discovered, could not easily be destroyed. "Ready?" he whispered. They nodded. Elias pushed a maintenance panel at the side of the pen. It clicked open, revealing a narrow service shaft that led out of the holding area. It was tight, too small for most of the guards to notice or enter quickly. He slid inside first, followed by Sira. One by one, the other girls joined, moving silently, clutching the small tools and rations he had given them. The tunnels were dark and cold. Every sound echoed ominously. A distant clank of metal, a faint murmur of alien voices. It all set Elias' nerves on edge. But he did not falter. He had trained for this. He had watched the patrols for weeks, timed the gaps, and memorized every route. This was the moment he had prepared for. The first obstacle came sooner than expected. A guard, young and impatient, rounded a corner and almost spotted Sira. Elias froze, pressing her against the wall. The guard passed without noticing, distracted by a comms device he fiddled with. The girls exhaled silently, relief washing over their faces. Elias continued leading them through the twisting service shafts. Each turn, each narrow passage, brought them closer to freedom or to discovery. Finally, they reached the old maintenance bay. It was largely abandoned, a relic of older systems. Here, Elias had stored a small hover cart he had repaired and hidden weeks ago. It was barely functional, but it could carry a few of the smaller girls at a time. "Get in," Elias instructed. "We move fast. One mistake and we run on foot. Understand?" They nodded. Sira climbed in first, followed by Lyra and a few others. Elias pushed the cart quietly along the rails, feeling the adrenaline surge through him. This was more than a mission, it was a gamble with lives. Then the alarm sounded. A harsh electronic wail echoed through the tunnels. Lights flashed red. Elias froze, his stomach dropping. The scrambler had only lasted for moments, and apparently a backup system had detected the disruption. "Run!" he shouted. The girls scrambled from the cart, moving as fast as their fragile limbs could carry them. Elias followed, his own heart pounding. Guards appeared at every corridor, alien figures with weapons raised. The sound of metal boots, shouting, and panicked cries filled the air. Elias felt the weight of responsibility crush him. Each girl who ran past him was a life he had to protect. One wrong move and everything would be over. He ducked into a side shaft, watching the guards pass. They were methodical, searching every corner, but Elias knew the tunnels better. He led the girls through narrow passages, down maintenance ladders and across service bridges, always staying ahead of the patrols. Hours seemed to pass in minutes. Every heartbeat, every whisper, every breath mattered. Elias kept the girls calm, reminding them to stay low, to follow silently, to trust him. They did. Eventually, they reached the perimeter wall of the facility. Beyond it, the barren plains of Kale-9 stretched into darkness. Freedom was close, but not guaranteed. Elias had prepared one last device, a small plasma cutter capable of melting through the metal fence in a few minutes. He worked quickly, hands steady despite the tension. Sparks flew as the metal gave way. Sierra and the other girls watched wide-eyed. This was the first time they had touched the outside world in their lives. When the fence finally yielded, Elias looked at the dark horizon. "Go," he whispered. "Run to the shuttle bay. There's a vehicle waiting." The girls ran, stumbling, laughing quietly at the sensation of open ground beneath their feet. Elias followed, carrying a few of the smaller ones when their legs gave out. He moved fast, ignoring exhaustion, ignoring fear. Only one thought occupied him: freedom. But the cartel would not let them go quietly. A squad of guards appeared, weapons drawn. Elias froze for a fraction of a second, calculating. Then he acted. Using a small smoke device he had prepared, he covered their escape route. The girls vanished into the darkness of the plains. Elias fought off the first wave of guards with improvised tools, striking quickly, moving faster than they could anticipate. It was chaotic, dangerous, but it worked. By the time the second wave arrived, the girls were out of sight, climbing into the hover shuttle Elias had prepared. Sierra looked back, her eyes shining with hope. Elias stayed for one last moment, holding the line just long enough for them to escape. Then he ran. The shuttle lifted off, carrying the girls away from Kale-9. Elias watched from the ground as the facility faded into the distance. He had succeeded, but only partially. Not all the girls had made it, some had been captured in the chaos, but the majority were free. And that was enough for now. Exhausted, wounded, but unbroken, Elias retreated into the shadows. He knew the cartel would come after him. They would not forgive this act. They would hunt him across the planet, across the stars if necessary. But he had done something incredible. He had proven that one human could stand against a system built on cruelty and still win. Days later, the girls began to speak of their new lives. Sierra, ever brave, described the skies, the open plains, and the first taste of freedom. She smiled at Elias, and he felt a warmth he had not known in years. This was why he had risked everything. But freedom came with a cost. The cartel was furious. They sent patrols, assassins, and bounty hunters to track down Elias and reclaim their property. Every step he took now was fraught with danger. Every decision could mean death. Still, Elias did not waver. He began to plan again, not just escape, but a counterattack. If he could continue helping, teaching, and protecting, he could ensure the girls' freedom was permanent. He could make a difference. For the first time in his life, Elias understood the weight of responsibility. Freedom was not given, it was taken. and sometimes one person had to carry the burden for many. The girls, now aboard safe vessels, looked at him as more than a human. They saw a protector, a guide, someone willing to sacrifice everything for their lives, and that realization gave Elias strength. Kale-9 was not defeated yet. The cartel's reach was vast and the danger would never fully disappear. But Elias had lit a spark that could ignite change across the galaxy. And in that spark, hope lived, because one human had dared to challenge an empire. Because one human had refused to look away. And because sometimes courage, compassion, and intelligence were more powerful than any weapon. The broadcast spread faster than Elias had imagined. What he had thought would be a small, hidden report of rebellion had turned into an interstellar call for justice. Every human ship, every allied species, and even neutral observers were now aware of Kale-9 horrors. News channels, pirate networks, and trade fleets carried the message. Girls bred for slaughter, Kale-9 cartel atrocities exposed. Elias sat in the shadows of a ruined maintenance bay, bruised and exhausted, yet his mind raced. He had acted alone to save the girls, but now something extraordinary was happening. The galaxy was responding. A fleet of human rescue vessels appeared in orbit over Kale-9 within hours. Not warships at first, but civilian transport ships, lightly armed scouts, and humanitarian crews. They had come because humans believed in one principle above all. When life is threatened, you act, no matter the risk. The cartel had expected silence. They had expected fear. But humanity did not negotiate with cruelty. They arrived in strength, organized, and determined to extract every survivor. Elias hurried the girls to the hidden landing bay he had prepared. Sira, Lyra, and the others moved cautiously, trusting him without question. Each of them had grown since their first steps outside the pens, stronger and braver. The training Elias had given them now mattered more than ever. As they neared the bay, a squad of cartel enforcers appeared. Heavier than the earlier patrols, armed with advanced weapons, they were the best the cartel could send. Elias felt his pulse quicken, but he did not hesitate. Using small tunnels and hidden passages he had scouted weeks ago, he led the girls on a circuitous route. The enforcers could not predict his moves. He had prepared for this. When the girls finally reached the shuttle, they were breathless but determined. Elias helped them aboard, checking each one to ensure they were accounted for. The craft was small, nimble, and fast, designed for escape, not combat. But today, speed would be their greatest weapon. Elias watched as the cartel forces closed in, scanning for targets. He activated the shuttle's cloaking device, a risky modification he had installed. The ship shimmered and vanished from sight, allowing the girls to escape into orbit. Meanwhile, chaos erupted across Kale-9. The cartel, furious at the human interference, scrambled reinforcements. Patrols were disoriented, leaders bickered, and the broadcasts of the girls' plight sparked outrage in unexpected corners. Other alien species, long oppressed by the cartel's dominance, saw opportunity and joined in. Old enemies turned allies for a single purpose: stop Kale-9 cruelty. In orbit, the girls finally saw the stars clearly for the first time. Sira pressed her face against the viewport, her eyes wide with wonder. She had never imagined a universe beyond the pens. The planets stretched endlessly, sparkling and alive. She turned to Elias, her small hands gripping his arm. "We free," she whispered. "Yes," Elias said, a faint smile on his face. "You are free." But freedom was not complete. Elias knew that Kale-9 would not forgive him. The cartel's reach was long, and they would hunt the girls, hunt him, hunt anyone who had been involved. Every decision now carried immense weight. The human fleet moved swiftly, coordinating with allies and civilian crafts to evacuate all survivors. Drones monitored cartel movements, diversionary tactics scattered enemy forces, and transport ships ferried the girls to safe zones. Every step was calculated. Every moment was precious. During the evacuation, Elias remained with the last group of girls, ensuring that none were left behind. He moved through the chaos with confidence, his mind calm despite the danger. Years of experience in trade routes and survival missions had trained him for this, but nothing had prepared him for the emotional weight of watching these girls finally experience safety. As the last shuttle lifted from the planet, the cartel realized their empire was crumbling. Their command towers were under siege from multiple fronts, their patrols scattered, and their secrets exposed to the galaxy. Kale-9's reputation as a hub of cruelty and slaughter would never recover. Sira spoke quietly to Elias as they traveled through the fleet. "Others come?" she asked. "Yes," Elias said. "Humans, allies, anyone who can help. You are not alone anymore. The galaxy has seen what was done here. They will not turn away." Her eyes shone with gratitude. "You saved us," she said softly. Elias shook his head. "I did not do it alone. The galaxy helped. But yes, I could not stay away. I could not ignore you." The fleet reached a safe system, a planet designated for refugees and survivors. The girls disembarked slowly, many of them overwhelmed by the open world, the sky, the wind, the freedom. Some stumbled, some cried, but all of them were alive. Elias stayed with them, helping them adjust, teaching them simple things about the new world they would call home. He encouraged Sira and the others to speak, to ask questions, to learn that life could be more than survival. Each small step mattered. Every day they grew stronger, braver, more human in their own way. Meanwhile, Kale-9 burned under investigation and revolt. The cartel could not cover the atrocities now. Every record, every video, every witness told the same story. Girls bred for slaughter, cages of cruelty, a human who refused to look away. Galactic authorities began to act. Other species demanded justice. Trade routes were blocked. The cartel's profits crumbled. One man's act had revealed a system built on cruelty, and the galaxy was holding it accountable. In quiet moments, Sira came to Elias. She had grown taller, stronger, more confident. She had started speaking more fluently in human languages, absorbing knowledge like a sponge. "Elias, why?" she asked. "Why risk everything?" Elias looked at her, thinking of the pens, the fear in her eyes, the quiet song she had sung when he first arrived. "Because someone had to," he said. "Because no one else would. Because sometimes one person can change many lives." She nodded slowly. The idea was difficult to grasp, but her eyes reflected understanding. "We will never forget," she said. "You don't have to," Elias replied. "Just live. That is enough." As days turned into weeks, the girls began to settle into their new lives. Some were adopted by human families. Others went to learning centers designed to help them regain strength, knowledge, and hope. Elias oversaw much of this quietly, never seeking credit, never asking for thanks. His reward was simple: seeing them laugh, see the sky, feel the wind, taste freedom for the first time. The galaxy was watching Kale-9. The cartel's leaders faced investigations, arrests, and public outrage. And the name Elias Rook began to spread quietly among those who understood courage, compassion, and human determination. He was not a soldier. He was not a hero in the traditional sense. But his actions proved something that could not be measured by medals or titles: that humans, when they choose to act, could change the fate of many. And the girls, Sira, Lyra, and all the others, would carry that lesson for the rest of their lives. They had been bred for slaughter, yes, but they were alive, they were free, and they owed that freedom to a human who had given up everything to protect them. The galaxy had seen Kale-9 burn, and in its place rose something far more powerful: hope, justice, and the undeniable strength of human compassion. Elias watched the stars one night, thinking of the facility he had left behind. Kale-9 was no longer silent. Its silence had been broken by voices, voices of freedom, voices of life, voices that the galaxy would never ignore again. He did not know what the future would hold. The cartel would fight back. danger would never fully disappear. But he had learned something essential. When humans act to protect the innocent, the universe notices. One person, one act of courage could ignite a wave that no empire could suppress. And that wave had begun. Because humanity, when faced with injustice, would not stand aside. Because one man had refused to look away. And because the girls, once bred for death, now walked into the future alive, free and stronger than any cage could have imagined.